And Chambers and Ed McAlpine, who have attended the tour since its inception in 2005, hired Four Dimensions Landscape Company to design and install their peaceful and productive garden in Moraga. This video that we're going to see, I don't want to forget to say it, was heroically made by Anne. She is not a videographer. I know you'll be shocked to hear that. She actually has a completely different career, but she did a great job on her video. So let me go now to talk about the garden. In the backyard, the swimming pool, lawn, and Monterey pines were removed. More space for growing edibles was created, and the balance of the garden was planted with mostly local California native plants, which make a charming understory to the 30 fruit trees that they have planted. One of my favorite garden tour stories, and Ed, I'll be telling this, I'm sure, till I die, is that during the online tour in 2020, while listening to Doug Talmy explain how non-native ornamentals provide little or no value to wildlife, Ed asked Anne where Agapanthus originated from. And upon hearing that Agapanthus is a non-native ornamental from South Africa, Ed got up in the middle of the talk and tore them out of the ground. So in a cooler moment, he and Anne reviewed the rest of the non-native ornamentals in their front garden and eliminated those that they didn't absolutely love, plus those that didn't survive the no water regime that was implemented this summer. Anne and Ed also have Tesla solar roof tiles, 2 lithium Tesla Powerwall batteries, and an induction range, and we'll be hearing about them today. Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning.
Well, thank you for joining us. So is there anything that you would like to say before we launch into your video?
I don't think so. I don't know, except that Ed helped too. It wasn't just me.
Yeah. It's the garden continues to evolve. The things we put in, there are things that that thrive beyond all expectation and things that don't. And, it is not the same garden it was 3 or 4 years ago, and it keeps evolving. We've planted more fruit trees. We went for more citrus, and we're continuing the micro farming too. So yeah, it's fun.
Okay, let's watch the video and we'll learn more about it.
We are.
Hi, I'm Ann Chambers and welcome to my garden. I'm joined here by Michael Thilgen from Four Dimensions Landscape Design, and we'll be walking through some of our favorite plants with you. So we had been long time building back the natives attendees, and when we took the leap to take out our backyard pool in 2015, we naturally decided to re-landscape in natives integrated with our fruit trees and vegetable garden. Our front yard is north facing and was landscaped in 2 stages. First, in 2016 and 17, we took out the lawn that was in the left section and replaced it with fescue, sedge, heuchera, Douglas iris, and toyon. Our second stage resulted from the Doug Talmy talk at the Building Back the Natives tour in 2020. My husband was so inspired during the talk that he walked out front and started digging up our Agapanthus in the middle of the talk. It turns out he never liked them and was looking for an excuse to get rid of them. But that triggered a reassessment where we tore out every non-native plant except the handful that we really loved. And then with the help of Four Dimensions on the planting plan, we added several keystone species this past fall. Keystone species are those plants that disproportionately support our ecosystem by hosting a high number of butterflies and moths that support bird life. So the first keystone plant we'd like to highlight, one of our favorites, is this oak tree. So Michael, you want to tell us a little bit about this?
Sure. This is the coast live oak, Quercus agrifolia, and it's a characteristic tree of the East Bay. It really gives a lot of the flavor of the landscape that we have here in the hills. It's a plant that supports a huge range of biodiversity. So if you're looking to enhance habitat, the coast live oak is a real good one to plant. Not only do they support the biological community very well, but they're also very helpful as landscape design elements. This is a young tree, and it's about maybe 15 feet tall now, but it will be double that height or more at maturity, and it will spread quite wide. And that generates much needed shade, especially in a warm area. So we find this a versatile and wonderful tree that really represents the nature of this region very well.
So from my point of view as the owner, well, first of all, just knowing that this is super high up on the Ptolemy list of the number of species of birds and caterpillars that are supported, this was a volunteer just 4 or 5 years ago. And we found that it was in a perfect location, so we just let it grow. And so it's only about 4 to 5 years old. Here are some examples of some mature oak trees.
So this is the Toyon, Heteromeles arbutifolia. And this is a remarkably versatile evergreen shrub that grows in very sunny, exposed areas. And it also tolerates fairly deep shade. It tolerates heavy clay and lighter soils. So it's a really valuable plant to work into a native garden because it allows us to generate screens where there might be undesirable views. We can plant a few toyons, and before too long, it just looks beautiful.
Okay, from my point of view, I just love toyons. They're just totally happy. We've had several volunteers in the front yard from the plant. It grows pretty rapidly. It's evergreen. It's great, as Michael mentioned, as a fence or a screen, and it has wonderful red berries in the fall through the winter from small little white flowers that blossom in the spring. We've had one volunteer on the other side of the yard that grew 2 feet over the summer with absolutely no water, so they're very drought adapted. So here's a photo of the toyon with its red berries and a close-up of those lovely red berries.
So both the oak and the toyon are native not only to this region, but to this particular garden. Seedlings have occurred naturally, spontaneously here. And because our goal in designing native gardens is to imitate nature as closely as possible, we're delighted to find this precedent for us to build on. We know that we're on the right track when we see these plants occurring naturally on the site.
Okay, we're running.
So this one is Ribes viburnifolium, the evergreen currant. It's native to the Channel Islands in Southern California, where it occurs naturally in dappled shade. And here we have it growing on the shady side of the house under the oak trees. These are young plants right now, but they'll be growing up and kind of sprawling and billowing, staying fairly low, about 2 feet high or so, by 4 or 6 feet across. Very well adapted to this area, shady area.
All right, so just a quick comment. This is, we just planted this year, so of course the evergreen currant's going to grow. But I have to say I'm already loving it because, number one, it's green and it's happy and we've got it everywhere. And so I'm fully expecting it to really enhance the front yard. And it's also very high on the keystone species list, the Ptolemy list. Here's a view of the mature plant, and notice the dappled shade. Hi, welcome to our backyard. Michael and I are going to take you through a few favorites here in our backyard. So the backyard was the main focus of our landscaping in 2017 and 18 after we removed the pool. The yard was landscaped with grass and Mediterranean drought-tolerant perennials. So we worked with Michael at 4 Dimensions Landscape to design a native garden that was naturalistic and beautiful, something that we would want to spend time in, and could feel that this was sort of our secret garden. Of course, the birds, bees, lizards, butterflies, and many, many hummingbirds have been a huge benefit. So just a quick comment on toyones. You'll see that we have the toyones are planted as a screen so that we don't have to look at our neighbor's ugly fence. So just wanted to point out that how effective they are as a screen. Okay, this is a Julia Phelps Ceanothus, one of my favorites. It's a keystone species, and I love the vibrant, deep violet flowers that we get in early March. It attracts a lot of native bees, which are very much smaller than the honeybees. And it's one of the first spring blossoming plants that really ushers in spring. I love to look at it from my study.
This is a ceanothus that's very effective incorporated into a screen, as we see it here, mixed with the toyon. It's a fast grower, and within just a few years provides a really beautiful show and a very effective mass of foliage.
Here are some closer views of the Ceanothus flowers.
So looking at this ceanothus after the Julia Phelps, this demonstrates what a widely ranging genus Ceanothus is. Some of the species are very prostrate and spreading, and others are almost tree-like in height with a number of different forms in between. So overall, Ceanothus are a wonderful addition to the garden.
Okay, this is a Centennial Ceanothus. It's a great ground cover that grows on the hill. It also has really lovely violet flowers, just like the Julia Phelps Ceanothus, and really deep green leaves. And it's not flowering yet, but it's almost about to, and it's March. So again, it's a very early bloomer. Here are some examples of the Centennial Ceanothus in flower. So this is one of our manzanitas. They're a little bit slow growing. This one is probably 4 years old, but they are also very hardy. They have lovely white small flowers and then berries in the spring. And when it's mature, it's a really lovely sort of sculptural plant. And of course, it's very high on the Ptolemy scale of being a keystone species.
Manzanitas are also highly variable in stature. They are prostrate, they are tree-like, they are in between. In this particular part of the garden, we were aiming to have a low screen so that there is definition between two adjacent areas.
Here's an example of a mature manzanita, which is also in flower. Look at those lovely little teardrop flowers. So this is a native fuchsia. This is what it looks like in the March time frame. But by the end of the summer, it's going to take over this whole area. It's got lovely bright red flowers, or bright red or orange flowers. It blooms August through October, so while everything else in the garden is kind of sad and dormant, it's raging. And it attracts a ton of hummingbirds. They just love it like crazy. So it's really one of the things that carries the garden through the fall. So here's that same fuchsia plant once it's in flower.
So all of the plants that are in this garden are chosen to be adapted to the climate cycle of rain and dry. And so they are, once established, able to live here without supplementary irrigation during the dry season. And the California fuchsia really exemplifies the hardiness and the adaptability to our climate cycle, coming into that full spectacular bloom late in the season when most of the other plants here have gone into their seasonal dormancy.
So we've lived with our native garden now for 4 to 5 years, and the natives have really strengthened our connection with the garden in many ways. First, it's been a joy to learn more about the plants and to recognize them on hikes. Also, discovering the year-round beauty and by observing the flowering, fruiting, and dormancy cycles of each plant really make the garden something that we interact with kind of continuously throughout the year. And finally, last year, we didn't water the natives at all since they had been established at that point. So the grasses turned yellow in the summer, adding visual contrast and also reminded us of the natural cycles. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you at the in-person tour on May 1st.
That was great. Thank you so much. And so, Anne, again, I want to thank you for making that video. You really rose to the challenge. I'd also like to thank Jason Bull for doing the drone footage, and to Jonathan Reckless for popping in at the last minute and helping with a couple of technical things. So, all right. So let's see. So watering your natives, you didn't water this last year at all. Your garden is how old?
Yes, it's 4 or 5 years. So 2016, 17, something like that. So 4 or 5 generally. But we've been planting, and like we planted a whole bunch in the front this year. So, we've gone through different stages.
Yeah. So you water your new plants, but you don't water the mature parts of your garden.
Well, we've just been turning on the water. Actually, with this spring with no water, we've been turning on our watering system, but trying to be careful. Like we just turned it off with the rains we've gotten the last couple days. But.
Yeah. I want to say that our garden is 12 years old, and we moved out of our house for a year when it was being remodeled, and we didn't water at all for a year and a half, really, because we were so busy packing, and then we were gone, and then we came back and we were busy unpacking, and the garden really, a mature garden, it stood well, being completely abandoned, no watering, no weeding, no deadheading, no nothing for a year and a half, and it still did well. So I'm curious, roughly how tall are your oak and your toyon, and how old are they?
I think the one is maybe 15 feet that we talked about in the front, the one that it's 4, 5, 6 years. And then the toyon's about 6 feet tall. So it really grows fast, the toyon does.
So it didn't take long to get some tall trees in there for you. Okay, I know that's one question. I saw you have a lawn substitute. Do you want to tell us about that kind of bunch grass area that you have?
Oh, it's a sand sedge, I guess, Carex pansive. And they plant, and it's just filled in a lot. So when it was planted, it was just, I don't know, there was just not much planted, and then it's just whatever it is that loves that place, and it's pretty much filled in, and we have to kind of keep it back from some of the other plants or else it'll take over. So.
And does it require water? How's the maintenance, traffic? How do you like it?
Oh, I like it a lot. Yeah, no, it looks great just because it loves that location. So it's pretty happy. I mean, we don't walk over it like you would on grass or anything, but I like the look and everything. So.
If you'd like to see the plant list for Ann and Ed's garden, you can click on the agenda link, or you can go over to the online tour and you can look at their garden page, and you'll see the agenda and the grass that we just talked about. So it sounds like you have color for a lot of the year in your garden because you have the fuchsia carrying you through the fall.
Right. And then in January, we start with some of the silk tassel, and and then the manzanita and the ceanothus and so forth. So it's pretty much all year round, which is just a lovely thing to sort of discover, compared to the old style gardens where you're just used to everything blooms in the summer and then it's dormant in the winter. So.
And silk tassel is a beautiful plant, isn't it? With those catkins or whatever they are that.
Right.
And somebody just popped in about your fruit trees. There was also a question earlier. Do you let the leaf litter, because they're primarily deciduous, I think. So is that a source of mulch for you?
Yeah, we do. We mulch under them to some extent, but you have to kind of rake back from contact with the trunk itself, or you can get bark diseases, and because we've got them on semi-dwarf stock, you have to be careful about where the graft is with regard to the dirt line, so that you don't cultivate something that's actually your root stock instead of the selected cultivar. We've been adding extra citrus because we have quite a number of them, but we've kind of got a sequential harvest of our various mandarins and things like that. And it's, kind of carries us through the winter. It's quite a morale builder, actually.
That's
Would
great.
you rattle off some of the fruit trees that you have? Because I know you have many interesting ones, and people will be interested.
Well, yeah, we've got several apples, 3 or 4 different kinds of apples, a Fuji apple and a Cox Orange Pippin apple and a Spitzberg apple, and I'm probably forgetting some of them. I think got 13 citrus, 2 lemons, a Meyer and a Eureka, like 5 or 6 mandarins. So the mandarins are fruiting from like November till we still gotta have a golden nugget now fruiting. So that's great for the winter. We've got a Tangelo. We've got 2 limes, a Barris lime and a Mexican lime. We've got several pears. We've got 2 camis, actually, pears, because we love them. And what's the other? A suckle pear. We've got a quince, Van Damian quince, and an apricot, and a gold mine nectarine. A couple figs, Violette de Bordeaux. I think, Kathy, we learned about them from your yard. They're great. We just planted a mulberry, so we'll see how that works out. A white Persian mulberry. And let's see, I think that and a couple of pomegranates as well.
And I
so
think
we're pretty much continuous throughout the year.
There was one native fruit, if you may call it that. I think you have a native grape. I have one too.
Yes, the monster. Yes.
And do you actually harvest those grapes as well?
Yes, we do. It grows so prolifically that it actually covers the entire top of the back pergola by the end of the summer. It provides wonderful shade. It provides a lot of our compost, because to keep it under control, you have to keep trimming it or
like every day.
When it's going where you don't want it to. We've named it. We call it Seymour, after the Little Shop of Horrors, because it's quite something.
It's like beware if you get it, because it'll go out of control. But it's beautiful at the same time. So.
I have to say a cautionary note about the Rogers Red. So you guys are really on top of it, and as you said, you like prune it every day. When I see Rogers Red in people's gardens, because I go to visit every gardens on the tour, it kind of makes my blood run cold. So we put Rogers Red in the back of our yard, and then we took it out some years later because it had spread to 5 of our neighbors' yards and knocked down a fence. And knocked down a plum tree. Like it climbed up in the plum tree and made the tree so heavy that in a big rain, that was the kind of the death knell for that tree. So there's another grape that actually, the Rogers Red is a cross between the edible grape and our native grape. And you can buy our local species native grape, which has smaller leaves and it's not such a rampant grower. So for people who do want grape, who don't feel like you're going to be out pruning your Rogers Red every day, and especially if you're near any kind of open space or any kind of other large trees that you don't want it to just like climb up and, strangle, then you have to be really careful with Rogers Red.
Actually, on a hike, I think to Castle Crag, we saw an oak tree pulled over by a native grape. I mean, that had gone up the side of it and actually pulled the tree over.
Mm-hmm.
It was an astounding,
Yeah, ours took out our plum. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I mean, one thing I noticed, there are not that many super vigorous native vines. So the grape being one, say the native huckleberry is more like a scrambler through shrubbery and stuff. I have a native morning glory in full sun, blanking on the botanical name. But that is also an option. But yeah, the Rogers Red might be too vigorous for most yards.
Mm. I want to say too that I know that Ed and Ann are big composters, and people might be interested since they're in your yard. Do you want to talk a little bit about your composting systems?
Yes, we got, I think they're called EnviroCycle. We got some closed bin composters when the local trash collection authority had a subsidized buy, and because we compost our kitchen scraps and because they're attractive to rodents, we start the composting cycle for those in the enclosed drum composters. So it's completely sealed in, and it's kind of rodent proof. So you can leave stuff in there long enough that it's no longer terribly attractive to rodents. And then at that point, it gets mixed in with the rest of the compost in the GeoBin composters, which I like because you can really control the volume. You can, unreel it and have a relatively large drum, or you can tighten it up and have a small one. So I've been able to move them around in my utility yard and kind of control the volume. Generally speaking, I probably rework the compost twice a year, like kind of a heavy, shovel and turn cycle. And especially in the fall, when, for instance, we trim off the grape, we'll have a tremendous volume of compost and so forth. And it all gets used. I mean, it all disappears back into the yard. We're not that stringent. When it comes to pernicious weeds, we use the green can and just get rid of them. I know that properly composted, they won't reproduce, but I am not doing enough intermediate processing of my composting that I'm killing all the seeds in it. In fact, we frequently are getting volunteer squash from the garden reproducing through the compost. Is telling me that it's not reaching that critical temperature where it's causing things to pre-germinate and die off. So I still use the green can for spitweed, spurge, and some of the other common offenders in the yard, and just get rid of those. But we still have lots and lots of volume going into the compost.
And I was the happy beneficiary of some of your squash, so I know that you guys are great gardeners. So let me say that there's a lot going on at Ann and Ed's garden. You can visit it on Sunday, May the 1st. It's in Moraga. And Ann and Ed, will you stay on after and type in, answer some questions if people have them on Zoom and we haven't gotten to them? So I want to thank you for being with us today and sharing your garden and supporting the tour. It's just been really great to have met you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
The garden that we just saw was designed and installed by 4 Dimensions Landscape Company, and the landscaper that was there with Ann and Ed was my longtime friend and colleague, Michael Filgen. I just want to say, I think it's so important, if you're interested in a native plant garden, to get some advice from a designer who is enthusiastic about, knowledgeable about, interested in, and willing to plant California native plants. It takes a lot to figure out which plants have similar needs for water and light, and how big they're going to get when they're mature, and what kind of drainage they want, and what looks good together, and the rhythm and repetition and continuity that makes for a pleasant design. I know I designed my own garden multiple times and it just never looked good. And we finally got help from 4 Dimensions Landscape Company. So there is a list on the website, Find a Designers, and you can find many landscape designers there, but I'm going to talk now about 4 Dimensions for a moment. 4 Dimensions is an award-winning landscape design company whose motto is restoring the earth, one garden at a time, and whose goal it is to bring people and nature together. 4 Dimensions creates well-planned, carefully crafted environments that enrich both human and natural life. You can call on 4 Dimensions to design, build, or nurture your garden. You can reach them at 4dimensionslandscape.com or 510-893-3333. 1999.